Hi everyone, Jason here from spiritualbabies.net. You've joined us today for a little chat, and we're joined by Rabbi Stuart Federer. And today we're going to talk about something which might cause a few eyebrows to be raised, in that we're talking about the concept of why the Jewish faith should be shared with others, and why it's the good thing to do for Jews to, I use an old-fashioned word, proselytize, or to introduce other people to their faith in a way that may encourage them to take on Judaism as a personal faith.
And I would argue it's not just good for the Jews. I would argue that by spreading the distinctive Jewish values throughout the world and making more Jews in the world, we make it better for the world. I don't think that Jewish values are the same as every other faith's values. I think our values are distinctive, and as such, I also think they're superior, and therefore I think they should be spread around, shall we say.
The tradition at the moment, or the common thought at the moment, is that Jews shouldn't proselytize. They're not supposed to go out and encourage people to become Jewish.
And I understand that, but I also understand where that comes from.
Right. Where does that come from?
Well, I don't personally believe that it originates within Judaism. I think it's a Jewish reaction to history and to the Jewish history of Jews missionizing. Okay, so look, the statement, if you don't like it done to you, don't do it to everybody else, and the Jews have been the victims of proselytizing and missionizing for roughly 2016 years, give or take. And if you don't like it done to you, don't do it to everybody else. So having had it done to us, we don't want to do it to everybody else. I think there are other reasons. For example, Jews have a tendency to believe that whatever Christians believe, we therefore believe the opposite. And if Christians believe in doing something, then, well, Jews obviously must believe in not doing it. And it doesn't matter what Judaism actually says on whatever topic we're talking about. The misconception is that if Christianity believes it, we must believe against it. And it's not always true. And if Christianity, look, Jason, my mother, may she rest in peace, I remember talking to her or listening to her talk to someone else, and they asked the question, why don't you Jews missionize? And my mother said, oh, well, if I tried to missionize you, it would be a great sin. Where's that written? You know, there may be a lot of writings against Jews, not spelling out the dangers of it. There may be attitudes of the rabbis against it, but where did that attitude develop from? And I know that there are going to be people who will say, well, that's not true. But Jews really did used to missionize. And there's an article actually I recently read by, for whatever you may think of him, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, who talked about the history of how Jews used to missionize before the Council of Nicaea in 325, and then the death penalty for any Jew caught missionizing at the Second Council of Nicaea in, I think, the year 402, give or take, somewhere in there. So it falls out of favor very quickly if you're going to get put to death because you're proselytizing.
So there was a certain amount of self-preservation and protecting your society by not, I was going to say another word, by not annoying the people that were kind of allowing you to live in their land.
And they're the ones with the power who have a history of persecution, who have a history of pushing the Jews into a ghetto or shtetl. And so kind of falls out of favor pretty quickly. But to say that the Jews never missionized, and let's be clear about something, there are a variety of ways to missionize. I'm not talking about rounding people up, pointing a gun to them or a sword at their back and say, if you don't convert, we're going to kill you. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about standing on street corners, like there's one street in Houston, an intersection, where there's a minister with a bullhorn, yelling to all the people in their cars who basically can't hear them because their windows are rolled up and they've got their air conditioners on, that if they don't convert, they're going to see the hellfire and brimstone.
Well, I think that's an important distinction, isn't it? When you think about proselytizing or missionizing, especially in Christianity, the perspective of that person is they're trying to save you from going to hell, and
we don't.
Right, and we don't have that, and they're trying to re-engage you in a relationship with your Creator. But Judaism doesn't necessarily say that you have to be Jewish to have a relationship with God. But
you don't have to be Jewish to go to heaven.
Mm.
So therefore, what becomes the impetus for the Jews to want to missionize the world? And I think there are quite a few of them, and we'll get to that in a minute. The first thing I want to talk about is that there are, in fact, rabbinic statements that contradict the idea that, Jews are not supposed to missionize. So, for example, let's see. How about the Aleinu? Okay, Jewish prayer at the end of virtually every service. Translation: We therefore hope in you, when you will remove the abomination from the earth, and when all idolatry will be abolished. Okay, L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, to perfect the world under the rule of God, and all humanity will call upon your name. May all the inhabitants of the world perceive and know that unto you every knee must bend and every tongue vow loyalty. So how are they supposed to come to that conclusion? Even in the days of the Messiah, the reason why the Gentile world, grabs the skirt of every Jew and says, I've heard God is with you, is because they are seeking the one true God and come to the Jews to do it. So there's an element of missionizing. And again, it's not to harangue people on the head. It's be open and welcoming when they come to us, and to do things that will entice them to come to us. Advertisements in newspapers. Our synagogue is having such and such a class about Judaism. If you've ever considered Judaism as a meaningful faith, come and learn. Well, that's missionizing.
I've often thought that on the high street of places where you can shop for a spiritual faith, I would have liked to have had Judaism as an option. I would have liked to have said, I wake up on a particular day and I have a day where I think to myself, I really could benefit by engaging my Creator. And as a white person in Europe, my only option was to go to church, and it would have been really awesome to have something else to test that against.
In the United States, there is a black nationalist movement that was created out of people in jail because the nationalist Muslim community, Nation of Islam, were in jails missionizing. Now, what would have happened if these many, many thousands of African Americans who were in jail were exposed to the values and benefits that come from practicing Judaism? A Louis Farrakhan would not have had the power base that he had. And wouldn't it have been a really good thing for all those people who became Nation of Islam to have become Jews and held Jewish values instead? What scares me the most is if we're not putting Judaism as a viable choice for people in the marketplace of ideas, in the marketplace of faiths, then they're going to wind up joining what is out there, or they're going to create their own, and both can be equally bad and dangerous for Jews. Mm. The Nation of Islam, making all their converts basically in jails, and I can imagine Jews are saying, but they're in jail. Why would we want them? How nice. That's really a welcoming Jewish spirit. Thank you. But I'd rather they had Jewish values. And we know that the Nation of Islam is rabidly anti-Semitic. So, you know, it's to our advantage to put the idea of conversion to Judaism in the marketplace of ideas, the marketplace of faiths. I'll give you an example. There's a woman who's very active, no longer in my synagogue, but moved to Austin, Texas, who always was fascinated by Judaism, had friends who were Jewish growing up, always wanted to be Jewish, really already held the values of Judaism, but thought you had to be born a Jew, until she was driving around Houston and happened to see a blue car, mine, that had bumper stickers on it, one of which reads, "Choose to be chosen, choose Judaism." And when she saw that, oh my God, this person is advertising for people to look into Judaism, she realized, well, you can become a Jew. And she wound up converting to Judaism and created a synagogue in the hills outside of Austin, Texas, which is thriving. So without that proselytizing, missionizing by the bumper sticker on the back of my car, which also has the bumper sticker for my website, whatjewsbelieve.org, and the Spanish translation, creenciajudia.org, okay, she'd still be in limbo and still, not have been able to put in her efforts to help the Jewish community by creating a synagogue. And that's just one example of many. But I didn't bash her on the head. I didn't say, ooh, if you don't convert, you're going to go to hell. I didn't go door to door and happen to knock on her house. At 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday when people would rather sleep, like some religious groups do in the United States. She saw the bumper sticker. She came to the Jewish people. And what I did is a form of missionizing. It doesn't have to be the kind of missionizing we expect and still experience from the Christian community.
In the world we live in today, what is the worry? What are the concerns of the groups that don't want Jews to missionize to people, or don't want to offer Judaism as a spiritual viable option?
Well, I can't speak for them. I can only say what it sounds like to my ears. It sounds like racism. It sounds like the idea that the Jews are a race because we have blood that's Jewish or genetics that are Jewish, and we don't want non-Jews mixing in with that. And I've heard words to that effect. I think it's a fear that, and by the way, this fear that I'm about to mention is mentioned in rabbinic writings, okay? And that is that they will come in and one of two things, either not be zealous enough for keeping the mitzvot, or they'll be too zealous for keeping the mitzvot and be a thorn in the side of other Jews who are much more relaxed about it, shall we say. So, but even one rabbi who was known for being very reticent has made statements that are in favor of Jews missionizing. And there are plenty of statements out there in rabbinic writings that are pro-Jewish. Okay, so for example, let's see. Moses ben Jacob of Susi, and you can see this in Encyclopedia Judaica, so long as the Jews act deceitfully towards Gentiles, who will attach themselves to the Jews? Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, usually suspicious of converts, quote, when a person comes to you in sincerity to be converted, do not reject it, but on the contrary, encourage him. Mechilta Amalek 3. So there are plenty of rabbinic quotations that actually are pro-conversion. Psachim 87b. HaKadosh Baruch Hu dispersed the people of Israel among the nations in order that they might acquire proselytes. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer ben Padat. Avot de Rabbi Natan, chapter 12. Every Jew should endeavor to actively bring men under the wings of God's presence, just as Abraham did. What does that mean, just as Abraham did? Well, if you take a look at Genesis chapter 12, verse 5, the biblical text reads, and Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had made, Nefesh Asher Asu, in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, into the land of Canaan they came. In other words, it says the souls they had made. Well, it doesn't mean children because Isaac and Esau hadn't been born yet. Okay, it's not talking about slaves. Okay, at this point in their life, they didn't have a whole lot of possessions. Okay, and Jewish interpretation has understood that to mean the souls they converted, the people they converted to the religion of the one true God, who went with them out of Canaan into the promised land. By the way, if you take a look at the narrative of Abraham, everywhere he goes, he seems to be setting up an altar to God. But unlike other altars that we find in archaeology, the altars that Abraham set up wouldn't have had an image of the God that that altar was for. That's a billboard.
Mm.
That's a way of advertising that there's a group out there that believe in a God who's invisible. Okay? That's like putting up a billboard. Are you looking for a faith that will bring meaning to your lives? Have you considered Judaism? Go to your local synagogue, and maybe a few listed there. That's the kind of missionizing I'm talking about.
I was considering as well the Exodus story, and the mixed multitude that left. They must have had some understanding of what those Hebrews believed. The name of the God who was causing these things to happen. They couldn't have just woken up one day and thought, oh, you know, they're all putting their coats on. We'll see if we can sneak out with them. There must have been some understanding and some transference of information between the Hebrew families and this mixed multitude that left, especially that the males of those would have had to have been circumcised as well. So I can't help thinking there was a little bit of advertising going on.
And the advertising would have been the miracles they themselves witnessed as Egyptian Gentiles from the 10 plagues. They would have said, you know, that really is God. And they would have followed the Jews out of Egypt and would have been incorporated into them because they would have converted at Sinai. You know, one could argue that in the same way that Sinai made a nation out of the Jewish people at that point who were nothing more than the descendants of the same family, it basically made them into a nation, and that's what would have happened to the Gentile community that came out of Egypt with the Jews. Okay, by the way, let me find it again. Of course, Judaism would prefer conversion out of the love of God, love of Torah, and love of the people of Israel. The halakha accepts those who convert in order to marry, to advance themselves, or out of fear. Yevamot 24b, okay? That's how I read it. And why would the rabbis say that the Gentiles who came out of Egypt, who converted, okay, out of fear because they saw the plagues, why would they say that's a legitimate conversion? Because they trust Judaism. Because they trust God to work on their souls through Judaism. Because when they start practicing it for the wrong reasons, they will eventually start practicing in Judaism for the right reasons. Because they trusted the faith. Because they said a person who experiences Judaism will eventually come to properly love God, Torah, and the people of Israel. Torah lo lishma, ba lishma, Torah done for the wrong reason becomes Torah done for the right reason. And so there's an ultimate trust in Judaism that its truth, its spirit will touch the soul of the convert, bringing them, you know, to do Judaism for the right reasons. Okay.
What's in it for the average person that has a religious epiphany and is looking for a spiritual avenue? What has Judaism got to offer?
Okay, I must say one thing. I would be scared of somebody if they had a religious epiphany and that's what made them Jewish. Every single autobiography of every single person I have ever read who's converted to Judaism talks about not a emotional reason for becoming Jewish. Oh, I prayed to their God and my eyesight was restored, so I'm going to convert to No, that's not why they convert to Judaism.
What I meant was if a person has they've come to the realization that they do believe in the Creator, and that not just in science.
Yeah, right. The real Creator.
Yeah, and they're looking for an avenue to run that faith through. Why would they choose Judaism over something else?
Okay, I think there are a lot of reasons why. Okay, there's a interesting book by Dennis Prager. It's called "The 9 Questions People Ask About Judaism." In that book, he says that every single Jewish law can fall under one or more of 4 different categories. And these categories are categories of motivation. What would make someone who is Jewish do Judaism? And for various reasons, the first area is because they want God in their lives. Look how Judaism relates to God. It's a very direct relationship with our Creator because we are commanded by God. Virtually every aspect of our day-to-day living is influenced by that. If we get a drink of water, there's a recitation of a blessing thanking God. Okay, Judaism's purpose is to take the mundane, profane things that we do in life and make them holy. What does holy mean? Holy means set apart, different, or distinct. I can have a book, but there are plenty of books in the world. But if I have a book that is a Hebrew book that is the text of the Tanakh, that book is holy to me. It is set apart and different and distinct from the other books of the world because it's from God. Okay. Every time we put something in our mouth, we're thinking about God. We're determining whether or not it's kosher. Okay. We are responding to the commandment of God to follow God's laws of diet, of eating. Okay. We are beginning with the Sabbath. Every week is all about God's commandment to the Jews to keep the Sabbath one day in, the 7th day of the week. It begins by lighting Sabbath candles. Okay, the candles, help us feel the presence of God in our lives. The second category of motivation is ethics. Let's go back to keeping kosher. Remember, I said any Jewish law will fall under one or more of these 4 categories. The next category is the ethical. I know that by keeping kosher, I know exactly how that animal, pardon the expression, lost its life. I know that it was slaughtered by someone, a shochet, a ritual slaughterer person, who has compassion for the animal he's slaughtering. And he's going to be making sure that he does it exactly the right way, because even though it's just a ritual, it is commanded by God to do it a very explicit way. And that way is going to ensure the humane treatment of the animal he's slaughtering. So when I keep kosher, I am learning ethics. I'm learning even our animals have to be treated with respect and to their being alive. And if you're going to slaughter it for food, at least do it humanely, which the Jewish way is the most humane way. And I would urge somebody to take a visit, if they can stomach this kind of thing, to go to a slaughterhouse. Most slaughterhouses, one line will be for kosher, one line will be for non-kosher, and compare the 2 systems of how the animal's life is taken, and then tell me which is the most humane. Jason, Saturday Night Live, 20 years ago, I don't remember how long ago, I wish I did, had a skit in their typical Saturday Night Live way, where you have a bunch of cowboys sitting around a campfire singing what sounds like a cowboy song, and it's all about getting them doggies to the slaughterhouse, and then in the song, still around the campfire, typical Saturday Night Live, is describing exactly how the animal is slaughtered, and it's not pretty, and it's also not kosher. funny but poignant. I wish I had a DVD of that. So the first category is the holy. The second is the ethical. Okay. The third is the national. Okay. A person who is Jewish is not alone. I know that on Friday night, okay, all across the world, there are Jews doing exactly what I'm doing, preparing for the Sabbath, going to services, coming home for a Shabbat meal, enjoying my family. You know, isn't it funny that psychologists are now telling everybody that, you know, to help strengthen the family, they need to have one meal a week where they put away the cell phones and all the electronics and just talk to each other. Wow, I think that's called Shabbat. Okay, but I know that a person who is enjoying the Sabbath, okay, is doing something that Jews around the world are doing, of course, depending on time zones, but they're doing it at the same time. Okay, I know that if I am in Dublin, Ireland, okay, I can go to a Jewish service, okay, and there are going to be nuances that are going to be different. I'm not saying that there aren't little bitty things that are different, but by and large, I'm going to know the service well enough to be able to follow along, even in Dublin, Ireland, okay, even though they don't have a Texas cowboy accent. So, okay, now, and the fourth category is a little difficult to understand. It's called reflexive. Basically, it means if you do it, you get something direct out of it. If you don't do it, you don't get anything out of it, which seems obvious, but people don't necessarily grasp this well. Let me give you an example. The mezuzah on the doorpost. In order that you will see it and remember to keep my commandments and be holy to your God. Okay. The mezuzah is a device, a physical reminder of our spiritual relationship to God. You put up the mezuzah, you get the reminder. You don't put up the mezuzah, you don't get the reminder. So doing Judaism brings you the holy, gives you an ethics to live your life by, attaches you to something greater than yourself, which can be just, when I light my Shabbat candles, I remember my grandmother. You're not alone. You had a grandmother who did the same thing, okay? And the reflexive, okay? There are other benefits that come from being Jewish, okay? From practicing Judaism, from doing the halakha, okay? God is not stupid, okay? God knows. God wants us to keep the halacha, to fulfill the mitzvot. So if God gives us benefits, subtle though some of them may be, if we do the commandments, we're more likely to do them and get the real benefit that God wants us to get out of doing them. So, a prime example, okay? It has been argued, I happen to agree with it, others may not, that one of the reasons why alcoholism and drunkenness has been far less among the Jewish community than, shall we say, other communities, is because how we handle alcohol. Jews don't say, wow, there's nothing to do, let's go out and get drunk. Let's go to the bar. Rather, the way in which we handle alcohol is that, like I said earlier about water, if you're going to drink it, there's a blessing that you recite, thanking God. Okay, so I'm not going to say, oh, there's nothing to do, let's go out and get drunk. When I have my wine, I'm going to recite a blessing, thanking God for the sweetness and joy of living, represented by the sweetness and joy of the alcohol. So how we handle it is to make time holy, is to make an event holy, set apart, different, and distinct. We're bringing God into the issue. Okay, it's not, we don't handle alcohol to take us out of the world, like being drunk or, God forbid, becoming an alcoholic. Okay, when a person's drunk, it's taking themselves out of the reality, out of the world. And Judaism is very much has a thrust of putting us into the world. You know, Jews never created monasteries, thank God. Okay, you know, you went to the yeshiva, but you still had to go home and be with family. So there are plenty of reasons to become Jewish and benefits that accrue to the person who practices Judaism, and not only just in those four categories, but in so many other ways, subtle ways, but they're there.
I think often when people are looking for some form of religion, what they're really looking for is a series of rituals and practices that will help them feel like they're doing something, right? Because God doesn't want your traditions; He's quite happy, but He
And
knows that you do need them. And I think
and
Judaism uniquely can turn any action during the day into something that, if you choose to, you can turn into something that's holier and more elevated.
and that's the whole point of it. Remember, Jews do not bless objects. Nobody's going to come to me and say, Rabbi, can you bless my car? Okay, what would that mean? They're going to be less likely to have an accident if the car is blessed. It doesn't make sense Jewishly. But what they will do, okay, and what a rabbi will do, is they will recite a blessing thanking God for the car. It's not the same thing. I'm not blessing the car. I am actually praising God for the car. When we don't bless wine, we bless God for the wine and the sweetness and joy of life that it represents. It's thanking God for creating the fruit of the vine, and that brings God into the issue, but we're not blessing the wine, we're blessing God for the wine. Okay, and that brings God into our lives, as I said before. So there's so much that Judaism does for the individual, and there are certain reasons for that. Okay, but I don't want to go into it now. Basically, God needs Jews to be Jewish because we become the advertising agency for God, that God exists and God demands moral and ethical behavior from God's creation. That's a whole class in and of itself.
If a person's watching this and they're considering Judaism as an option, or they have a friend that they think might be interested, what would you advise their first steps to be?
Depends on where they live. Okay. First of all, I hope they would live in an area that has synagogues to go to. And I would advise them to shul shop. And what that means is that whatever they have at their hand, okay, whatever kind of synagogue they have, be it Reform, Conservative, or Orthodox, to go to it, to learn from it, to meet the people, get a sense of the rabbi, get a sense of the people who are members of that congregation, and go to every congregation in the area and see where they feel the most comfortable. Jason, the majority of people who become what's called Baal Tshuva, okay, don't come to Orthodox Judaism out of nothing and say one day, oh, I think I'm going to become Orthodox. There's something that has sparked them that they learned from either Reform or Conservative Judaism. And if you look at the statistics of the backgrounds of people who are becoming Orthodox, the majority of them are coming from already Jewish families and synagogues and temples. Okay, so something about being Reform or Conservative puts a spark in them that they want more of. And, those are the statistics. And I would say that, and I know plenty of people, I'm very proud of the fact that many of the people who converted to Judaism through me have in fact gone on for a second conversion in Orthodox Judaism. You start out what you've got at your hand. Okay, you start out with what's there. You go to the variety of synagogues, if you're lucky to live in an area like that, and see where you're comfortable, and then go, attend regularly, take classes that are offered. Most likely they will have an Introduction to Judaism class, which doubles as what you have to take to convert. Go to them, talk to the rabbi. What I beg people to do is get a notebook, keep it with you at all times. When you're reading something, when you see a movie, when you're looking at the Bible, when you're whatever it is that makes you think of a question you want to ask, write down the question in your notebook so you don't forget what you want to ask, and then go talk to a rabbi. Go talk to someone who knows. Go talk to a rabbi and ask your questions. every single autobiography I've ever read of people who've converted to Judaism talk about this, how they would be afraid to ask a question of their minister, and when they would ask questions of their minister, they might even get kicked out of the church because the devil got a hold of them. If you really had faith, you wouldn't ask a question like that. And they're stunned when they come to a Saturday morning Shabbat study where part of the service in Judaism, study is a form of prayer. Because the more we learn about God's creation, whether we're studying astrophysics or the Torah portion, we're learning more about God's creation. So study is a form of prayer, and part of the prayer service is to study. And at my synagogue, we take out the Torah portion and we start discussing it. But it's not, I speak and they have to write down everything I say in their little notebooks and they go home, study it, and be able to regurgitate it later, which is the classic way of Bible study at a church service. But we're going back and forth. I'm asking questions. The synagogue membership or the people at the congregation are asking me questions. I'm disagreeing with them. They're disagreeing with me. And we come to a conclusion. There's an old joke, which I guess is funny, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. What that means is that one Jew cites the thesis, the other Jew cites the antithesis, the opposite. They argue about it. They come up with a third opinion, which is called the synthesis. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Those are the 3. That's what it means. That's what it's referring to. That's how Jews study. That is my advice to them. And let nothing stop them. And let no one stop them. And that's the best way to begin, is to begin.
So if you're at home and you've been pondering whether you are interested in Judaism as an option, it doesn't hurt to ask, and it certainly doesn't hurt to attend your local synagogue, talk to your rabbi, try it before you buy it. Let's go a few times.
And believe me, they're not going to be the only ones there who are in the exact same situation as they are. They're not alone in their search. The world is tens of thousands of people have abandoned Christianity and are searching and are just like them considering full conversion to Judaism. They're not alone. They'll meet other people who have either already gone through the process or who are like them looking at beginning the process. So that's what I would do.
Lovely. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for giving us your time on this tricky subject.
It's my pleasure. And as I told you, my lecture is 20 pages roughly of single-spaced notes, and we didn't touch the surface of them. There are plenty of other rabbinic quotes that talk about, very positive towards welcoming converts and converting people to Judaism. There's this idea that you push away with one hand, but you pull closer with the other. By the way, I'll challenge people, and that is every so often I hear, well, you're supposed to refuse someone trying to convert to Judaism 3 times, and then if they come back the 4th, then you can accept them. I just want somebody to show it to me. Show me the page. Just show me where that's written. I've heard that as a myth. I haven't been able to find it. I mean, I'm sure it's somewhere, but I don't think it's Mishnah. I don't think it's Gemara. It's probably going to be a commentary's commentary to a commentary's commentary, bringing it a lot closer to the present age.
Yeah, the only thing I've heard with any kind of contextual link would be to Ruth. That's, but that seems very watery to me. Because that wasn't a rabbi. And that was Naomi. It wasn't even the people of Israel or a rabbi or a teacher. That was...
It was Naomi who was trying to say, stay with your own family, stay with your own group. Why would you want to come with me? I'm an old woman. And you're right, they could point to that, but I haven't seen anybody, the evidence, to the contrary. Others will disagree with me, and that's fine.
Well, we'll find out.
I'm sure we will.
If you have questions or comments, leave them under the video. If you've got ideas for subjects you'd like us to look at next time, please leave them as well. Thank you, Rabbi Fedorov, for giving us your time.
My pleasure always is.
And you guys at home, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll see you all again very soon.